Content warning. This story contains extreme graphic violence and disturbing content. Discretion is advised.
Calaroga Shark Media. Hello and welcome to Ghost. This episode is titled Cape Cod Shark Story.
The quaint coastal village of Siren's Cove had always existed in humble reverence of the vast, fathomless depths that encircled its rocky shores. Generations of hardy fishermen had sought their fortunes upon those ever-churning waters, paying respectful deference to the capricious power and unknowable mysteries lurking in the inky blackness between the swells. But it was the blistering summer of 1975 that saw the town's long-standing equilibrium with the marine realm shattered by an ancient, primordial evil. A series of savage attacks had set the tight-knit community awash in sheer, unvarnished terror as whispered tales spread of a great white behemoth stalking the shoals and hidden reefs just beyond the breakers. One by one, the monster's victims fell, their mutilated bodies washing ashore to bear grisly testament to the unspeakable violence they had faced. There was the torn asunder remains of a sun-bronzed lifeguard, stripped of all but a tattered swimsuit. The shredded torso of an elderly fisherman named Caleb Bray, his leathery, barnacle-encrusted hands still clutching the soggy remnants of his lucky lure. And perhaps most horrific of all, the tattered form of a young boy named Peter, his matchstick limbs and torso seeming to have been put through a macabre parody of the thresher's churn. As the death toll mounted and the once idyllic summer season withered into a miasma of fear and grief, the town's leadership took unprecedented action. A bounty, the sum of which strained the modest village's coffers, was offered to any brave or foolish enough to venture forth and slay the magnificent unholy terror that had claimed dominion over their coastal waters. It was a doomed call to arms that drew a motley array of seasoned sea dogs, reckless thrill-seekers, and more than a few coin-hungry drifters out into the choppy blackness. But as dusk's eerie gloom settled over the roiling swells, only one battered and decrepit fishing trawler remained, its decks clear of all souls save for its grizzled owner and master, Samuel Briggs. A lifelong mariner who had wrestled Leviathan from the drink since the first whiskered days of his youth, Briggs was as weathered and unforgiving as the granite cliffs overlooking his beloved cove. With a snarl more befitting of the beasts lurking in the trenches, he spat a ribbon of salt-cured tobacco over the rail and let his cold, steely gaze rove the restless seascape as if daring the hungering monstrosity to reveal itself. The ensuing moments fell eerily, deathly silent, punctuated only by the creak of weathered wood and the slap of heaving swells against the trawler's barnacle-encrusted hull. But then, without preamble or warning, the ocean's glassy visage erupted in a gargantuan eruption of thrashing white and scarlet-tinged brine. With a spine-shuddering bellow that reverberated to Briggs's very core, the legendary beast at last revealed itself, vaulting from the screaming maelstrom in an explosion of scale, tooth, and endless appetite. Larger than anything mortal science could quantify, the mighty Leviathan seemed to blot out the very horizon, an unholy spawn of the deep's most accursed nightmares. Over 30 feet from snout to thrashing tail, the gargantuan great white defied all comprehension, its granite-grey musculature sheathed in a relentless array of famished teeth and suckers. Its ebon, empty eyes burned with the indifferent fury of 1,000 raging tempests, appraising the decimated crew and their pathetic vessel. In that eternity-suspending moment of mortal reckoning, any final shred of bravado or mortal bravery desiccated within Samuel Briggs's very marrow. As the behemoth's terrible maw unhinged with agonizing slowness, he understood with a cold, brutal clarity that he was bearing witness to an emissary from the blackest depths of oblivion itself. When the monster at last struck, It did so without preamble or savage declaration, only the pitiless inevitability of the grave's icy embrace. One moment, the doomed trawler's deck was groaning beneath the weight of Briggs's salty footfalls, and the next, the ancient Leviathan had descended upon them with the fury of a pale, scale-sheathed comet from the blackest revenges of the deep. Like a steel corsair's ram cleaving through rotten timbers, the beast's granite flanks sheared through the trawler's hull, disemboweling it in an explosion of shattered oak and billowing cotton canvas. Hapless crew members were battered, shredded, and flung asunder. Some impaled on jagged rockets of shrapnel, others simply pulverized beneath the stupefying magnitude of the forces unleashed. And yet, through the blinding, disorienting cacophony of splintering wood and saltwater's chaotic deluge, Samuel Briggs remained hauntingly, impossibly aware of every soul-sundering moment. He witnessed crewmen he'd caroused and brawled with since faded childhood days reduced to showers of scarlet atomization between those ever-snapping jaws. In one soaring, visceral instant, the weather-beaten salt named Tanner McGee was snatched in mid-scream from the battered deck as nonchalantly as a cat claiming a meadow shrew. And Silas Howe, the last surviving son of a long line of proud Siren's Cove mariners, had his head and torso neatly sheared from his kicking, shredded legs before being dragged down into the swirling, chum-thickened eddies. When the tumult's climactic crescendo at last fell horribly still, Samuel Briggs alone remained, the once proud shipwright and master fisherman now reduced to a battered, hollowed effigy of the man, his spirit capsized in a sea of shock, grief, and soul-scalding trauma no spiritualist could ever hope to plumb. Clinging with fading ebbs of strength to a waterlogged scrap of driftwood anchor line, he watched as the granite terror re-emerged from the inky depths with the languorous patience of an apex predator acknowledging its singular dominion. Meeting its unblinking ebon regard for the first and final time, Briggs understood the cold, indifferent hunger burning behind those soulless eyes. And in that eternity-distilling moment, he sensed the beast had scented the chill tendrils of oblivion creeping through his shredded, failing form. Yet when the gargantuan maw hinged open in slow, terrible inevitability to deliver the coup de grace, Briggs felt something pivotal within his spirit fracturing. A strand of sanity severed by the howling, pitiless grandeur of nature's most ravenous progeny claiming its birthrights. And as the darkness rushed in to erase his transgressions, a single severed synapse in the old mariner's psyche seemed to solidify. He would not be consumed. Not here, not like this. If the sea's most unholy terror meant to claim his soul entirely, it would first have to learn the true meaning of an eternity's worth of vengeance. In that blinding reverberation of fury, hatred, and howling defiance of the hereafter, Briggs' spirit vacated his ruined corporeal vessel, bleeding out into the marine cosmos like the ectoplasmic exhalation of a damned and forsaken god. A shriek of purest anguish tore from his ghostly maw as his essence expanded beyond all boundaries of space and time, becoming a sentient maelstrom of unchained malice. Like atmospheric wildfires sparked to scourge an entire world, the vengeful force that had once been Samuel Briggs raked outward, searing across the waters of Cape Cod to touch every vessel, every beachhead, and every human soul unfortunate enough to have tempted the ocean's fury. From Marblehead to Provincetown, tales began to multiply of sudden storms lashing coastal villages, rogue waves crashing across seawalls and decks, and howling apparitions taking possession of lifeboats and fishing trawlers with frothing poltergeist intensity. And always, the restless captain's vengeful spirit was there, riding the whipped wakes and tearing thunderheads like a primordial, unstoppable force of spite and hatred made incarnate. Those who dared glimpse his unwavering obsidian visage in the mist and roiling spray told of hollow sockets burning with the timeless pain of countless violated depths, and a gaping maw opening in endless wordless shrieks of defiance. To this day, the families and townsfolk of Siren's Cove honor the ancient pact with the sea, heeding the warnings not to tempt the waters when the nights grow foul and the fog lies thick across the sound. For they know that's when the drowned captain's aggrieved spirit musters its fathomless fury, ready to draw any foolish enough to chance those sable swells down into a cold oblivion where even the most unholy terrors fear to tread.
Ghost is a Calaroga Shark media production, written and hosted by Alexander Ian McIntyre, produced by Mark Francis, executive producers Mark Francis and John McDermott. Portions of this podcast may have been created with the assistance of AI.
This show, along with hundreds of others from Calaroga Shark Media, is available commercial-free on any player, hassle-free. Just look for the link in the episode or show notes. Ghost now has merch. Find shirts, mugs, and more with the Ghost logo for sale at our merch store. There's free shipping and 10% off now with the coupon NEWMERCH10. Did we say there's free shipping? Check out all the goods at calaroga.com, that's CALOROGA.com, or just look for the link in the show notes. Thanks for supporting the show, we really appreciate it.
Calaroga Shark Media.